What if I told you that the most successful invasion of the United States wasn't carried out by a foreign army, but by a series of 30-second television commercials? That for the last 70 years, a psychological campaign has been waged for control of the most valuable territory on Earth, the space between your ears. You might laugh, but think about it. Can you still sing the Oscar Mayer Wiener song? Do you know where the beef is? Do you feel the sudden urge to buy a Coke for the entire world? These aren't just memories. They are carefully planted flags from a war you never even knew was being fought. These jingles, slogans, and images are cultural artifacts, yes, but they're also weapons of influence, meticulously designed to bypass your rational mind and burrow directly into your subconscious. And they worked. They worked so well that they didn't just sell us soap and soda. They sold us lifestyles, aspirations, and a specific curated version of the American dream. In this series, we are going on a decade-by-decade journey to deconstruct the most powerful and iconic commercials in American history. This isn't just a nostalgia trip. This is an autopsy. We're going to peel back the layers of each classic ad and expose the psychological triggers, the marketing genius, and the cultural shifts that made them so unforgettable. You will learn the secret language of advertising. You'll understand why certain jingles are impossible to forget, why some mascots feel like old friends, and how advertisers have consistently tapped into our deepest fears and desires to sell us everything from cars to cereal. By the end, you won't just see a commercial, you'll see the matrix. You'll understand the invisible architecture of persuasion that has shaped our country, our families, and even our own identities. This is the ultimate throwback, but it's also the secret history of how modern America was bought and sold. To understand how it all began, we have to go back to a time of booming optimism and simmering anxiety. The 1950s. World War II was over, the troops were home, and America was experiencing an unprecedented wave of prosperity. The suburbs were exploding, the baby boom was in full swing, and in the corner of millions of brand new living rooms sat a new piece of furniture, a glowing box that was about to change the world forever. The television. It was the new American hearth, the electronic campfire around which the modern family gathered. And for advertisers, it was the promised land. They had a direct, unfiltered line into the American home for the first time in history. The only problem? Nobody really knew what to do with it. Early TV commercials were often clumsy, awkward, and deeply strange. Many were just radio ads with pictures, featuring a stuffy announcer standing next to a product and literally just reading the box. They were trying to apply the old rules of print and radio to a revolutionary new medium, and it wasn't working. The audience was captivated by the television itself, but the ads were just noise. They needed something that could cut through the clutter, something that could grab your attention and hold it. They needed a hero, and they found one in a tiny, smiling, tablet-shaped puppet. The commercial is for Alka-Seltzer, and it starts with a jingle so simple, so infectiously cheerful, it feels like it was written by a child. A little puppet character with a magic wand and a tablet for a hat sings, "Plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh what a relief it is." His name was Speedy, and Speedy wasn't just a mascot. He was a revolution in a pillbox. Let's break down why this seemingly silly ad was a work of absolute genius. First, the context. The 1950s was the era of the three-martini lunch and the rise of corporate culture. Men in gray flannel suits were climbing the ladder, but the pressure was immense. America was also discovering richer, processed foods. The result? A national epidemic of indigestion. This wasn't just a physical ailment, it was a symptom of the era's anxieties. Alka-Seltzer wasn't just selling a stomach remedy, it was selling relief from the pressures of modern American life. And Speedy was the friendly, non-threatening face of that relief. Second, the psychology of the mascot. Before Speedy, mascots were often just static drawings on a box, like the Quaker Oats man. Speedy was different. He was alive. He moved, he sang, he had a personality. By creating him as a stop-motion puppet, the ad agency Wade Advertising made him tangible and charming. He wasn't a corporate shill. He was a little buddy who showed up right when you needed him. This created a powerful emotional connection. You didn't just buy Alka-Seltzer, you trusted Speedy. This was the birth of the modern brand mascot. The idea that a fictional character could build a relationship with the consumer on behalf of a faceless corporation. The Geico Gecko, the Aflac Duck, Flo from Progressive, they all stand on the shoulders of this little puppet. Third, the jingle itself. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh what a relief it is arguably the most perfect jingle ever written. It's a masterclass in simplicity and effectiveness. The plop, plop is onomatopoeia. It's the sound the product actually makes. It's also an instruction. Use 2 tablets, not 1. Sales of Alka-Seltzer reportedly doubled almost overnight, not because they changed the formula, but because the jingle subliminally told people to use twice as much. The fizz fizz is the sound of the product working. The auditory proof that your relief is on its way. And the final line, "Oh, what a relief it is," isn't just a slogan. It's the emotional payoff. It's the voice of the satisfied customer. In just 9 words, the jingle identifies the product, tells you how to use it, demonstrates it working, and promises the desired result. It's a complete sales pitch in under 5 seconds. The Speedy campaign ran for over a decade, one of the longest and most successful in advertising history. It cemented the core formula for television advertising that would dominate for the next 20 years. The problem-solution framework. The ad presents a relatable problem: too much to eat, too much to drink, a headache, a sour stomach, and then like a superhero, Speedy arrives with the one and only solution. It's a simple, powerful narrative that positions the product as the hero of the story. The legacy of this one commercial is staggering. It taught advertisers that television wasn't just radio with pictures. It was a visual storytelling medium. It proved that a strong, likable character could build brand loyalty far more effectively than 1,000 facts and figures. And it established the power of a simple, endlessly repeatable jingle to lodge a brand in the collective consciousness of a nation. The 1950s were about establishing the rules. The ads were safe, optimistic, and focused on the traditional nuclear family. They reflected a vision of America that was prosperous, uniform, and confident in its future. They created a baseline for what a commercial should be. But that world of conformity was about to shatter. The clean-cut optimism of the 50s was about to collide head-on with a decade of rebellion, protest, and revolution. The civil rights movement, the Vietnam War, and a burgeoning counterculture were about to challenge every assumption the 1950s held dear. And for advertisers, this presented a terrifying new question. How do you sell soda and shampoo to a generation that doesn't trust authority, questions consumerism, and thinks advertising is just the man trying to sell you out? The simple solutions of Speedy Alka-Seltzer wouldn't be enough. They would have to break all the rules and, in doing so, invent a new language of persuasion for a new America. That new language wouldn't be born in a boardroom filled with yes-men in gray flannel suits. It would be born in the smoke-filled offices of a renegade agency, a place that valued artists and writers more than statisticians and account executives. And it would be used to sell the most unsellable product in America: a small, ugly, slow foreign car that looked like a beetle. In the late 1950s and early 60s, American roads were ruled by titans of chrome and steel: Cadillacs with tail fins like rocket ships, Chevrolet Bel Airs in two-tone pastels, Ford Thunderbirds that promised power, prestige, and romance. The American dream wasn't just a house with a white picket fence. It was a land yacht in the driveway. Advertising reflected this. It was loud, boastful, and full of hyperbole. Ads were packed to the margins with smiling families, exclamation points, and breathless copy about Turbofire V8s and hydromatic transmissions. The rule was simple: bigger is better. And if your product isn't the biggest, you lie and say it is. Into this world of excess rolled the Volkswagen Beetle. And it had problems. Big ones. First, it was German. Less than 15 years after the end of World War II, selling a people's car conceived under the Nazi regime to American GIs and their families was challenging, to say the least. Second, it was the physical opposite of everything America desired. It was tiny. It was weirdly shaped. Its engine was in the back and sounded like a sewing machine. It topped out at a leisurely 72 miles per hour. By every metric of 1960s American car culture, the VW Beetle was a total joke. Any normal ad agency would have tried to hide its flaws. They would have used clever camera angles to make it look bigger. They would have filled the ad with a beautiful, glamorous woman and hoped no one noticed the car. They would have given it a powerful American-sounding name like the Volkswagen Phantom, and never, ever mentioned its German origins. But Volkswagen didn't go to a normal agency. They went to Doyle Dane Bernbach, or DDB. DDB was the epicenter of what would become known as the Creative Revolution. They believed the American consumer was not an idiot. They believed people were tired of being shouted at, tired of the empty promises and the fake smiles. Their philosophy was radical. Tell the truth, but tell it in a way that's so witty, so charming, and so disarmingly honest that you can't help but listen. When the VW account landed on their desk, they didn't see a list of problems. They saw a list of features. And they created a campaign that didn't just sell a car, It started a conversation and defined a generation. It began with a print ad. Imagine a full page in a glossy magazine like Life or the Saturday Evening Post. But the page is almost entirely empty, just a vast ocean of white space. Down in the top left corner, positioned almost as an afterthought, is a tiny black and white photo of the Volkswagen Beetle. And underneath it, just 2 words in a clean, simple font. Think small. This was an atom bomb dropped on Madison Avenue. It broke every rule. Ads were supposed to be cluttered, to scream for your attention. This ad whispered. It used empty space to draw your eye in, forcing you to focus on the one small thing on the page. The headline, Think Small, was a direct assault on the American ethos of bigger is better. It was a challenge. It was an invitation to be different. And the copy below was just as revolutionary. It didn't make grand claims. It made small practical ones. It talked about the great gas mileage. It mentioned how easy it was to park, how cheap the insurance was, how you'd rarely have to replace the tires because they didn't have to carry a 2-ton behemoth. It was a conversation, not a sales pitch. Treated you like you had a brain. Then came another ad. This one showed a picture of the Beetle with a simple, one-word headline, Lemon. In the car industry, a lemon is a defective vehicle. It's the worst thing you can call a car. But the copy underneath explained the story. It told of a meticulous inspector at the Volkswagen factory in Germany, a man named Kurt Kroner, who had rejected an entire car because of a tiny, almost invisible scratch on the chrome strip of the glove compartment. The ad's punchline? We pluck the lemons, you get the plums. In one brilliant move, they took a negative word and turned it into a symbol of their obsessive quality control. They were admitting they weren't perfect, which paradoxically made you trust them completely. This was the new language of persuasion. It was self-deprecation as a superpower. It was honesty as the ultimate marketing tool. When DDB brought this philosophy to television, the results were just as groundbreaking. The commercials were like little short films, tiny slices of life that were often funny, poignant, and always intelligent. There's one famous spot that opens on a grand mansion. A long line of black limousines is pulling away from a funeral. A narrator reads a man's last will and testament. He leaves millions to his wife, his sons, his business partners. You're watching this parade of wealthy, somber-looking people. And then the narrator reads the final bequest. To my nephew Harold, who often told me, a penny saved is a penny earned. I leave my entire fortune of $100 billion. And as the last limousine pulls away, a humble little Volkswagen Beetle putters up to the mansion. Harold gets out. The ad didn't show the car speeding down a highway. It didn't feature a celebrity. It told a story about a value system. It said, smart rich people are frugal. They drive Volkswagens. The message was clear. Driving a Beetle wasn't a sign of being poor. It was a sign of being intelligent. Another classic commercial shows a man leaving his house in the middle of a raging blizzard. The snow is piled high. The world is shut down. You watch him get into his VW Beetle and you think, there's no way that little car is going anywhere. But it starts right up. It plows through the deep snow, the only car moving on the deserted streets. It drives, and you wonder where on earth this guy could be going in such terrible weather. Finally, he pulls up to a massive building, gets out and walks inside. A moment later, a giant snowplow pulls out of the garage. The tagline appears on screen. Have you ever wondered how the man who drives the snowplow drives to the snowplow? It's a perfect demonstration of the car's reliability and toughness, but it's done with a story, a riddle, and a satisfying punchline. It respects your intelligence enough to let you connect the dots. The Volkswagen campaign did more than sell cars. Sold an ideology. Owning a Beetle became a quiet statement of rebellion. It meant you were above the crass consumerism of Detroit. You were practical, you were unpretentious, you were smart. You weren't fooled by shiny chrome and empty horsepower figures. You were part of a club for people who were in on the joke. The campaign perfectly captured the spirit of the 1960s counterculture and sold it back to them in the form of a car. It gave a generation of young people, a generation that was questioning authority and rejecting materialism, a product they could embrace without feeling like they were selling out. DDB and Volkswagen proved that you didn't have to shout to be heard. They showed that in a world of exaggeration, the most powerful and revolutionary thing you could do was simply tell the truth. But as the 60s bled into the 70s, this spirit of authentic anti-establishment thinking would face a new challenge. Corporations started to notice the power of the counterculture's message of peace, love, and unity, and they began to wonder, Could that be bottled? Could you take a global youth movement, sand off its rough political edges, and turn it into the ultimate feel-good sales pitch? The answer would come from the top of a hill in Italy, and it would involve the whole world, a bottle of Coke, and a song that would be impossible to forget. The year is 1971. The world feels like it's coming apart at the seams. The Vietnam War is a wound that refuses to heal, cleaving American society in two. The peace and love idealism of the late 60s has curdled into something more cynical, more weary. Protests are a common sight. Trust in institutions is plummeting, and a sense of unease hangs in the air. People are desperate for a reason to believe in something again, for a sign that maybe, just maybe, we're not all that different after all. And in the middle of all this turmoil, an advertising executive named Bill Backer is having a very bad day. Backer, the creative director for Coca-Cola's ad agency, was on a flight to London to meet with a team of songwriters. His mission? Create a new jingle for Coke. But thick, soupy fog over London forced his plane to divert to Shannon, Ireland. He was stranded. And he wasn't alone. The airport was a chaotic mess of frustrated travelers from all over the world. They were angry, they were tired, and they were taking it out on each other. Different languages, different clothes, different cultures, all clashing in a symphony of mutual annoyance. Backer watched the bickering, the impatience, the sheer lack of connection. It was a perfect microcosm of the fractured world he lived in. But then the next morning something shifted. Backer was sitting in the airport cafe, watching the same people from the day before. The anger was gone. The tension had melted away. And in its place, laughter, quiet conversations, shared smiles between total strangers. And as he looked closer, he saw the one common denominator. Almost everyone was holding a little glass bottle with a red and white label. They were drinking Coca-Cola. In that moment, an idea struck him with the force of a lightning bolt. Coke wasn't just a soft drink. It was a social catalyst. It was a small shared ritual that could momentarily pause the world's conflicts. It was, as he saw it, a tiny bit of common ground. He grabbed the nearest napkin and scribbled down a line that would change advertising forever. "I'd like to buy the world a Coke and keep it company." When Backer finally made it to London, he presented his napkin idea to the British songwriters, Roger Cook and Roger Greenaway. They were skeptical. It sounded less like a jingle and more like something a folk singer would write. But Backer's passion was infectious. He didn't just see a slogan. He saw a feeling. He saw those people in the Irish airport, united by a simple pleasure. The team got to work, and the line evolved into a gentle melodic radio jingle. A song that was released with moderate success. But for a television commercial, Coca-Cola wanted to go bigger. Way bigger. They envisioned bringing Backer's napkin scribble to life. They wanted to literally show the world, a chorus of humanity, singing this song of unity. The idea was beautiful, ambitious, and wildly expensive. The budget was set at a staggering $250,000, the equivalent of over $1.7 million today. For a 60-second commercial, the pressure was immense. Their first attempt was an unmitigated catastrophe. The production team chose the iconic White Cliffs of Dover in England as their backdrop. They hired a group of young people to be their global choir. And then the rain started. And it didn't stop. For 3 solid days, a miserable, bone-chilling drizzle soaked the cast, the crew, and the entire set. The beautiful White Cliffs became a treacherous, muddy slope. The choir huddled under tarps, shivering and miserable. The footage was unusable. The budget was torched. The dream of buying the world a Coke was dead, drowned in the English rain. But the creative team refused to let the idea die. They went back to Coca-Cola, hat in hand, and somehow convinced them to fund a second attempt. They moved the entire production to Rome, Italy, praying for sunshine. The challenge now was casting. They couldn't just hire a bunch of Italian actors. They needed a group that genuinely looked like it was from every corner of the globe. So the production team fanned out across Rome, becoming amateur anthropologists. They visited foreign embassies. They scouted international schools. They walked through tourist hotspots, literally stopping people on the street. The young woman who would become the face of the commercial, the lead singer with the unforgettable smile, wasn't an actress. She was a British nanny named Linda Hickson, who was simply sightseeing in Rome's Piazza Navona when a casting director spotted her. He asked her one question. "Can you lip sync?" She said she could, and just like that, she was cast. They found their location, a perfect, sun-drenched hilltop outside the city. The logistics were a nightmare. They had to bus hundreds of extras, many of whom didn't speak the same language, to the remote location, get them into traditional costumes from their home countries, and arrange them in a massive pyramid formation. Each one was handed an ice-cold bottle of Coke, and then, as the cameras started to roll, the magic that had eluded them in Dover finally happened. Under the warm Italian sun, this patchwork choir of strangers began to sing, or rather, to lip-sync to the song that was now titled, "I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing." From a distance, they looked like a single, harmonious entity. The camera pulled back and back and back, until the entire hillside of humanity was captured in one breathtaking, epic shot. It was Bill Backer's vision from the airport cafe, realized on a scale no one could have imagined. The Hilltop ad aired in the United States in July of 1971, and the public reaction was unlike anything Coca-Cola had ever seen. It was explosive. The company was flooded with more than 100,000 letters, a truly staggering number in a pre-internet world. And people weren't just writing to say they liked the commercial. They were writing to thank Coca-Cola, thank them for the message of hope, thank them for a 60-second moment of unity in a deeply divided time. Radio stations were inundated with calls from people desperate to hear the song from the Coke ad. The demand was so overwhelming that the band, the New Seekers, rushed back into the studio to re-record the jingle as a full-length pop song. It became a global phenomenon, rocketing to the top of the charts in the US, the UK, and around the world, selling millions of copies. The proceeds were even donated to UNICEF. The Hilltop ad did more than just sell soda. It became a cultural touchstone. It was a secular hymn for a generation that had lost faith in so many of its institutions. It perfectly captured the zeitgeist, the deep, powerful yearning for peace and connection that lay just beneath the surface of all the anger and protest. It was a masterstroke of emotional branding, proving that you could sell a product not by talking about its ingredients or its price, but by associating it with a powerful, universal human emotion. It set the template for decades of advertising to come. It was a simple idea, born of a frustrating travel delay and scribbled on a napkin, that managed to bottle the hope of an entire generation. The ad showed the world that a commercial could be more than just a commercial. It could be a piece of pop art, a unifying anthem, a genuine source of comfort. It was the ultimate feel-good sales pitch. But the gentle, communal spirit of the 70s was about to give way to something very different. The world was barreling towards a new decade of ambition, excess, and blockbuster entertainment. The age of me was dawning. How would advertising adapt to a culture that was suddenly less interested in teaching the world to sing, and more interested in changing the world with a single powerful swing of a sledgehammer? The year is 1984. The Super Bowl is on, and during a commercial break, America is introduced to a vision of the future that looks less like a promise and more like a prison. Rows of gray, drone-like figures sit transfixed, staring at a giant screen where a cold, authoritarian leader dictates their reality. It's oppressive. It's bleak. It's the world of George Orwell's 1984 brought to life. Then a lone figure sprints into the hall, a woman in vibrant color, pursued by stormtroopers. She carries a massive sledgehammer. With a final, powerful swing, she hurls it at the screen, which explodes in a blinding flash of light, shattering the leader's image and freeing the minds of the audience. The text appears, "On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh." And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984. That wasn't an advertisement. That was a declaration of war. Directed by Ridley Scott, fresh off Blade Runner, Apple's 1984 commercial wasn't just selling a personal computer. It was selling revolution. It was a cultural event, a 60-second blockbuster that positioned its rival IBM as the monolithic big brother, and the Macintosh as the tool of liberation for the individual. This single ad, aired only once nationally, perfectly captured the spirit of the 1980s. The communal, peace and love idealism of the 70s was over. The 80s were about power, ambition, and the triumph of the individual. It was the decade of Wall Street, of yuppies, of greed is good. And advertising, ever the mirror to culture, reflected this seismic shift. It became bigger, bolder, and more aggressive than ever before. This was the era of the brand wars. It wasn't enough to just sell your product. You had to vanquish your competitor. And no battlefield was more fiercely contested than the cola wars between Coca-Cola and Pepsi. For years, Coke was the undisputed king, the classic, the original. But Pepsi saw an opening. They couldn't win on heritage, so they decided to win on cool. They launched a campaign with a simple, audacious slogan: Pepsi, the choice of a new generation. And to be the voice of that new generation, they needed its undisputed king. They needed Michael Jackson. In 1984, at the absolute peak of his Thriller fame, Michael Jackson signed a then unprecedented $5 million endorsement deal with Pepsi. The result was a series of commercials that were less about soda and more about pure electrifying spectacle. In one iconic spot, a group of kids styled like a mini version of the Jacksons are dancing in the street, mimicking Michael's moves and singing a Pepsi-fied version of Billie Jean. Then the man himself appears. The moonwalk, the glove, the jacket. He joins the kids, turning a simple street scene into a global concert. The message was crystal clear. Coke is what your parents drink. Pepsi is what Michael Jackson drinks. Pepsi is pop culture. It was a brilliant, targeted assault that redefined celebrity endorsements. It wasn't just a famous person holding a product anymore. It was the fusion of a brand's identity with the world's biggest star. Pepsi wasn't just a beverage. It was a ticket to the cultural zeitgeist. The campaign was so massive, so culturally significant, that even its behind-the-scenes disasters became legendary. During the filming of one commercial, a pyrotechnic effect malfunctioned, famously setting Michael Jackson's hair on fire. The incident became a shocking headline, a moment of real-world danger that only added to the mythos and scale of the entire endeavor. The Cola Wars were no joke. They were playing for keeps, and the celebrity arms race was the new frontier. But the 80s weren't just about high-concept, cinematic productions and global megastars. While Apple was smashing Big Brother and Pepsi was hiring the king of pop, a different kind of revolution was brewing at a fast food chain. Wendy's was a distant third in the burger wars, trailing far behind McDonald's and Burger King. They couldn't outspend them, so they had to outsmart them. They needed an idea so simple, so sticky, that it would cut through the clutter and become a part of the national conversation. They found it in 3 elderly women, a comically oversized hamburger bun, and a single unforgettable question. The commercial is a masterpiece of simplicity. 3 sweet, grandmotherly ladies are admiring a new burger from a fictional competitor called Home of the Big Bun. The bun is enormous, a fluffy, cloud-like monstrosity. They marvel at its size. But when one of them, the feisty 81-year-old Clara Peller, lifts the top bun, she finds a comically tiny, almost invisible meat patty. Her expression shifts from curiosity to outrage. She peers at the pathetic burger, looks around in disbelief, and then barks in a gravelly voice that could cut glass. "Where's the beef?" The phrase was an instant phenomenon. It was more than a slogan. It was a rallying cry for a public tired of empty promises and flashy packaging with no substance. "Where's the beef?" became the go-to punchline for late-night talk show hosts. It was printed on t-shirts and bumper stickers. It was even used in the 1_9_8_4 presidential primary, when Walter Mondale used the line to attack his rival Gary Hart's policies as being all style and no substance. Clara Peller became an unlikely folk hero, a national treasure overnight. The genius of "Where's the Beef?" was its authenticity. In a decade defined by slick surfaces, big hair, and manufactured cool, here was a commercial that felt raw and real. It tapped into a universal feeling of being let down, of being promised the world and getting a tiny little patty. It proved that you didn't need a Hollywood director or a multi-million-dollar celebrity contract to create a cultural earthquake. All you needed was a great idea, a perfect performer, and a question that everyone was already thinking. Wendy's sales skyrocketed by over 30%. They had found the beef. So the 1980s gave us 2 dominant, seemingly contradictory models for advertising success. On one hand, you had the big-budget, cinematic event ad, like Apple's 1984, or Pepsi's Michael Jackson series, commercials as blockbuster entertainment. On the other, you had the simple, brutally effective catchphrase like, "Where's the beef?" A single line that could embed itself into the nation's psyche. It was a decade of excess and efficiency, of epic storytelling and gut-punch one-liners. Brands were brash, confident, and willing to go for the jugular. But as the decade of decadence wound down, a new sensibility began to emerge. The polished, aspirational, and often self-serious tone of the 80s was starting to feel tired. A new generation, raised on MTV and a healthy dose of skepticism, was coming of age. They were wary of big corporations, suspicious of celebrity endorsements, and fluent in the language of irony. They didn't want to be sold a revolution in a can or a blockbuster in a burger box. They didn't want to be told what was cool. They wanted to decide for themselves. The slick, loud, and ambitious advertising of the 1980s was about to collide with the wall of flannel, grunge, and cynical detachment. The question was no longer "Where's the beef?" but "Who even cares?" And that question, who even cares, became the defining challenge of the 1990s. The decade wasn't a sequel to the 80s, it was a rebuttal. It was a collective cultural eye roll. The shiny, optimistic consumerism of the Reagan years had given way to a generation steeped in irony and skepticism. This was Generation X, the latchkey kids who'd grown up watching Saturday morning cartoons that were really just 30-minute toy commercials. They'd seen it all. They'd heard every pitch. And they were profoundly unimpressed. The new uniform wasn't a power suit. It was a flannel shirt, ripped jeans, and a well-worn band t-shirt. The soundtrack wasn't synthesized pop. It was the distorted, angsty scream of a Seattle grunge band. Authenticity, or at least the appearance of authenticity, was the new currency. Anything that felt too polished, too slick, too much like it was trying to sell you something was immediately rejected. The worst thing you could be in the 90s was a sellout. So, how do you advertise to a generation whose entire identity is built on being anti-advertisement? How do you sell soda to someone who thinks marketing is a joke? How do you sell cars to someone who thinks ambition is lame? You couldn't just yell louder or use brighter colors. That was the language of their parents. Advertisers had to learn a whole new dialect. The language of sarcasm, self-awareness, and the inside joke. They had to stop acting like a slick salesman and start acting like the cool, cynical friend who says, "Yeah, this is a commercial, we both know it. So let's just have some fun with it." This shift created some of the most clever, understated, and iconic advertising of all time. Sprite launched its Image is Nothing, Thirst is Everything campaign, a direct shot at the celebrity-obsessed, style-over-substance marketing of its competitors. It was a campaign that basically said, "We're not going to try to convince you that our soda will make you a basketball star. It's just sugar water. Drink it if you're thirsty." And it worked. It was honest. It was real. But amidst all this irony and deconstruction, one campaign achieved something truly miraculous. It took the most boring, mundane, and everyday product imaginable, a product that had been in American refrigerators for 100 years, and made it the center of a cultural phenomenon. The product was milk, and the campaign was pure, unadulterated genius. The problem for the California Milk Processor Board was simple. Milk was milk. Nobody got excited about it. It was a staple, an afterthought. People didn't crave milk, they just had it. Sales were stagnant. Their ad agency, Goodbye Silverstein and Partners, was tasked with the impossible. Make milk cool. Or at least make people think about it. Their breakthrough came not from studying people who loved milk, but from a focus group where a woman lamented the primal frustration of having a delicious bowl of cereal or a perfect cookie, and reaching into the fridge to find an empty milk carton. The insight was explosive. The power of milk wasn't in its presence, but in its absence. The selling point wasn't the joy of drinking milk, but the pure, unmitigated agony of not having it when you needed it most. It was a campaign built not on satisfaction but on deprivation. And in 1993, they unleashed the first television spot to test this theory. It wasn't flashy. It didn't feature a celebrity. It was a perfect little one-act play about history, sandwiches, and suffering. The commercial opens in a drab, cluttered warehouse, a private museum dedicated to American history, and specifically, the famous 1804 duel between Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. Our hero is a nerdy, bespectacled history buff, surrounded by artifacts. He's just made himself the most perfect-looking peanut butter sandwich you've ever seen. The bread is thick, the peanut butter is slathered on generously. He takes a huge bite. As he's chewing, the radio announcer crackles to life. "And we have a $10,000 winner," the DJ exclaims. He explains that the station is doing a trivia contest, and all our hero has to do is answer one question to win the jackpot. The man, his mouth now full of peanut butter, mumbles in excitement. He grabs a carton of milk and pours a tall, frosty glass. This is his moment. The DJ poses the question, "Who shot Alexander Hamilton in that famous duel?" The man's eyes go wide. He knows this. He lives this. This is the easiest $10,000 anyone has ever made. He's surrounded by the literal answer. He points to paintings, to the actual pistols used in the duel displayed on the wall. But he can't speak. His mouth is completely glued shut with the thick wad of peanut butter. He panics. He reaches for the glass of milk, the one thing that can save him, the one thing that can loosen his tongue and let him claim his prize. He brings the glass to his lips, and it's empty. He already drank it. The camera zooms in on his face, a mask of pure, desperate horror. He looks at the empty glass, then back at the phone. He tries to force the words out, but all that emerges is a muffled, incomprehensible groan. Aowanbo. The DJ on the other end is confused. I'm sorry, we can't understand you. You're gargling. We'll have to move on to the next caller. Click. The line goes dead. The dream is over. Our hero slumps in defeat, a victim of his own poor planning and lack of sufficient dairy. And then the screen cuts to black, and two simple words appear. Two words that weren't a slogan but a question, an accusation, a cultural dare. Got milk. That was it. That was the whole ad. It didn't show a single happy person enjoying a glass of milk. It didn't talk about calcium or strong bones. It presented a scenario of absolute torture and identified milk as the only possible salvation. It was hilarious, it was tragic, and it was one of the most relatable things anyone had ever seen on television. Who hasn't taken a bite of something dry or sticky and desperately needed a drink? The ad didn't sell the product. It sold the problem that only the product could solve. It was a complete paradigm shift, and it was a cultural atom bomb. Got milk instantly entered the lexicon. It was on t-shirts, it was parroted on late-night TV, it was the punchline to a million jokes. The campaign then evolved into the iconic print ads featuring hundreds of celebrities, athletes, and even cartoon characters sporting a milk mustache. From Batman to Britney Spears, everyone had to have one. The campaign made a boring commodity into a status symbol. It made milk relevant. The Aaron Burr commercial was the perfect ad for the 90s. It was smart. It didn't talk down to its audience. Trusted you to get the joke. It was a little dark, a little weird, and deeply human. It understood that sometimes, the most powerful way to make someone want something is to show them how miserable they'd be without it. This was the new playbook. Advertising was no longer about creating a need, but about tapping into a pre-existing one, in this case, the primal fear of a peanut butter-choked mouth. As the decade wore on, this clever, self-aware approach became the standard. The internet was beginning to bubble up from the underground, with the screech of a dial-up modem heralding a new age of connection and information. The world felt like it was on the cusp of something massive, a digital frontier that would change everything. The cynicism of the early 90s was slowly giving way to the wide-eyed, gold rush optimism of the dot-com boom. The last decade of the 20th century was coming to a close, and the quiet, clever whisper of "got milk" was about to be drowned out by the deafening roar of a new question, one that would define the next 10 years of chaos, fortune, and spectacular collapse. You've got mail. The year 2000 wasn't just the start of a new century. It was the dawn of a new reality. A reality connected by screeching, crackling dial-up modems, a sound that was less an annoyance and more the anthem of the future. After the world collectively held its breath, waiting for the Y2K bug to plunge us into digital darkness, and then exhaled in relief when nothing happened, an incredible optimism took hold. It felt like we'd passed a great test. The machines didn't fail us. In fact, they were about to make us all rich. This was the height of the dot-com bubble, an era of irrational exuberance, where common sense was thrown out the window in favor of a new, intoxicating gospel. The internet changes everything. It was a digital gold rush. Venture capitalists in Silicon Valley were handing out $100 million checks on the back of napkins. All you needed was a plausible idea, a catchy name, and most importantly, a .com at the end of it. Profit. That was a quaint 20th century concept. The new metric was eyeballs. How many people were looking at your website? That was all that mattered. The plan was simple: get big fast, figure out how to make money later. And the grandest stage for this new Gilded Age was, fittingly, the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 34, in January of 2000, would go down in history as the dot-com Super Bowl. A staggering 17 different dot-com companies paid over $2 million apiece for a 30-second spot. These were companies that had never turned a dime in profit, companies that were, in many cases, little more than a logo and a prayer. They were burning through investor cash at a terrifying rate, all for a moment in the sun. And in this glittering parade of digital wannabes, one star shined brighter, and would ultimately fall harder than all the rest. He wasn't a slick CEO or a celebrity spokesperson. He was a sock puppet. His name was, well, he was just the Pets.com sock puppet. And he was perfect. In a world of overproduced, hyper-slick advertising, he was refreshingly lo-fi. He looked like something you could make at your kitchen table. A simple white sock, button eyes, floppy ears, and a microphone he'd shove in the faces of confused dogs and cats on the street. His whole shtick was interviewing pets, asking them what they thought of the new website, Pets.com, a place where their owners could buy food, toys, and supplies online. The humor was gentle, the premise was simple, and the puppet himself was a star. With his slightly sarcastic, world-weary voice, he was the everyman or every puppet, a charmingly cynical observer in a world gone mad for e-commerce. His catchphrase, "Because pets can't drive," was simple, memorable, and brilliant. It cut through all the jargon about paradigms and synergies, and just stated a basic value proposition. And America fell in love. The sock puppet wasn't just a mascot. He was a cultural phenomenon. He appeared on Good Morning America and lived with Regis and Kathy Lee. He had a giant balloon in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. He did interviews with People magazine. He was, for a brief shining moment, one of the most recognizable figures in the country. He was the goofy, lovable face of a revolution that promised to deliver a 40-pound bag of dog food straight to your door, for free. And that's where the problem was. The business behind the beloved puppet was built on a foundation of sand. Pets.com was following the .com playbook to the letter. Grow at all costs. They spent millions on state-of-the-art warehouses and a massive advertising budget, headlined by their puppet superstar. But their core business model was a financial black hole. They were selling heavy, low-margin products like pet food and kitty litter, and they were often selling them for less than they paid for them, all while offering free shipping. Think about that. They were paying more to acquire and ship a bag of kibble than the customer was actually paying for it. Every single sale lost them money. The hope was that they would build such a massive loyal customer base that they could eventually somehow become profitable. It was a strategy fueled by cheap money and pure faith in the unstoppable power of the internet. But faith can't defy gravity forever. In March of 2000, just 2 months after the .com Super Bowl, the music stopped. The tech-heavy NASDAQ stock index, which had been on a meteoric near-vertical climb, suddenly faltered. Then it plunged. The bubble had burst. The flood of venture capital money dried up overnight. Companies that had been valued in the billions were suddenly asked a very uncomfortable question. So, how exactly do you make money? For many, the answer was, we don't. Panic swept through Silicon Valley. The burn rate, the speed at which these companies were incinerating investor cash, was no longer a badge of honor. It was a death sentence. And Pets.com was burning hotter than almost anyone. The crash was brutal and swift. The same investors who had been desperate to pour money into the next big thing were now desperate to get out. The stock price of Pets.com, which had peaked at $14 a share, collapsed to just 19 cents. The end came on November 7, 2000. Just 268 days after its much-hyped initial public offering, Pets.com announced it was ceasing operations. The company had burned through over $300 million in funding in less than 2 years. The warehouses were closed. The employees were laid off. And the most famous puppet in America was out of a job. The company's final act was a liquidation sale, selling off its remaining assets, which famously included its inventory of dog food, its office furniture, and the intellectual property rights to the sock puppet himself. The Pets.com sock puppet became the poster child for the .com bust. He was a symbol of the absurdity, the excess, and the ultimate folly of the era. He represented an idea that so many people wanted to believe in. That a clever idea and a charming mascot were enough to build a business, that the old rules of profit and loss no longer applied. His fall from grace was a harsh, public lesson. It was the end of the internet's naive, utopian childhood. The wild party was over. The collapse of Pets.com and so many others like it was a cleansing fire. It wiped out the bad ideas and the unsustainable business models. But in the smoking rubble of the .com dream, something new was beginning to grow. The survivors of the crash, companies like Amazon and eBay, had learned the hard lessons. They understood that the internet wasn't magic. It was a tool. A powerful tool, but one that still had to be connected to a sound, profitable business. The era of get big fast was over. A new era was dawning. One that would be defined not by goofy puppets and irrational hype, but by something far more powerful and far more personal: data. The focus was shifting from simply getting eyeballs to understanding exactly who those eyeballs belonged to, and what they wanted to buy, watch, and believe. The digital world was about to get a whole lot smarter, and in doing so it would begin to watch us back. And as the digital world began to watch us back, it found a culture in the middle of a seismic identity crisis. The 1990s. The decade wasn't just a new chapter. It felt like a different book entirely. The Cold War was over, the Berlin Wall was rubble, and for the first time in half a century, there wasn't a single monolithic enemy to define ourselves against. So we turned inward. We got cynical. We got ironic. We got alternative. The polished, aspirational excess of the 80s suddenly looked ridiculous. Greed was no longer good, it was lame. The new currency wasn't the corner office, it was authenticity. Or at least the appearance of authenticity. This was the era of Generation X, the so-called slacker generation, who had been marketed to their entire lives and had the receipts to prove it. They could smell a sales pitch from a mile away, and they hated it. They didn't want to be told what was cool. They wanted to discover it in a dusty record store or a dimly lit club. For advertisers, this was a nightmare. How do you sell to people who pride themselves on not being sold to? The old playbook was useless. A celebrity in a power suit holding your product was now a signal of everything to avoid. The new strategy was to not look like a strategy at all. Advertising had to get weird. It had to get self-aware. It had to whisper instead of shout. It had to embed itself so deep into the culture that you couldn't tell where the TV show ended and the commercial began. Brands started using shaky handheld cameras. They used grainy film stock. They cast real-looking people with bad haircuts and thrift store clothes. They made commercials that were intentionally confusing, that felt more like indie film shorts than ads for soda or sneakers. The goal was no longer to say, "Buy our product, it's the best." The goal was to say, "Hey, we get it. We're on your side. We're cool. And by the way, we also happen to sell this thing." It was a delicate, often clumsy dance of corporate America trying to put on a flannel shirt and ripped jeans to hang out with the kids. Sometimes it was brilliant. Other times it was painfully awkward. But through it all, one truth remained. The biggest stage, the one place where you could still shout and be heard by everyone, was the Super Bowl. And in 1995, during Super Bowl 29, a commercial aired that was so profoundly simple, so brilliantly stupid, it would define the entire decade's approach to advertising. It opens on a dark, humid night in a Louisiana swamp. The air is thick with the sound of crickets and the low hum of nature. The camera slowly pans across murky water, landing on a lone bullfrog, perched on a lily pad, minding its own business. It puffs out its throat and lets out a deep guttural croak. But a moment of silence. The camera pans again, finding another frog a few feet away. This one is leaner, a bit more alert. It croaks back, its voice a little higher. "Weiss." The camera finds a third frog, this one skinny and neurotic looking. It completes the trio with a frantic high-pitched squeak. Air. And that was it. That was the whole commercial. 3 frogs in a swamp, croaking the name Budweiser. There was no one drinking the beer. No party. No Clydesdale horses. Just 3 amphibians and a 3-syllable brand name. And it was a work of absolute genius. The ad agency, Darcy Macias Benton and Bulls, had created something that wasn't just an ad. It was a puzzle, an earworm, and a punchline all in one. Your brain couldn't help but solve it. But, Weiss, air. The moment the third frog croaked, you got the joke. And because you figured it out yourself, it felt rewarding. It stuck in your head in a way that 1,000 slogans never could. The next day, it was all anyone was talking about. Not the game, not the halftime show, but the frogs. Kids were imitating the sounds on the playground. Office workers were greeting each other with Bud, Weiss, air. It became a national inside joke that 100 million people were in on. The campaign was an unprecedented success. It was the analog world's first true viral meme. It was so popular that Budweiser brought the frogs back, giving them nemesis in the form of 2 slick, fast-talking chameleons named Louie and Frank, who were constantly plotting to assassinate them to reclaim their rightful spot as the Budweiser mascots. The ads became a mini-sitcom, a must-see event in every commercial break. But the real genius of the Budweiser frogs wasn't just their catchiness. It was how perfectly they anticipated the future of media. The ad was short. It was repetitive. It was visually simple. It was, in essence, a proto-GIF. It was a piece of content perfectly engineered for a world of shrinking attention spans, a world that was just beginning to log on. While the frogs were croaking on television, a new sound was beginning to echo in homes across America. The screeching, chaotic handshake of a dial-up modem connecting to the internet. This wasn't the corporate internet of the 80s. This was America Online. Prodigy. CompuServe. This was the web for the rest of us. And where the people go, the advertisers follow. In 1994, the very first banner ad appeared on a website called hotwire.com. It was a simple, psychedelic-looking rectangle from AT&T that read, "Have you ever clicked your mouse right here? You will." It was less of an ad and more of a dare. And in a world where no one had ever seen a banner ad before, it worked. A staggering 44% of the people who saw it clicked it. For a brief, shining moment, advertising on the internet was a novelty. It was a strange new message from a strange new world. This kicked off a gold rush. The late 90s became the era of the dot-com bubble. Companies with names like Pets.com, eToys, and Webvan, many of which had no profits and sometimes no finished products, were suddenly worth billions of dollars. And they spent that money on advertising, blanketing the airwaves with commercials that promised a utopian future delivered to your doorstep. They hired sock puppets. They made flashy, expensive Super Bowl ads. They were desperately trying to use the old medium of television to legitimize the new medium of the internet. The message was simple. The future is online and we are the future. It was a period of wild, unbridled optimism, a belief that the normal rules of business and gravity had been suspended. All you needed was a good domain name and a quirky commercial, and you could change the world. The 90s then was a decade caught between two worlds. It perfected the art of the analog meme with things like the Budweiser frogs and the Got Milk campaign, creating massive, shared cultural moments using the brute force of network television. But at the same time, it was planting the seeds of its own disruption. It was laying the fiber optic cables, teaching people how to click, and building the digital storefronts that would eventually shatter that shared culture into a million personalized pieces. The decade that began with flannel and grunge ended with the frantic, speculative energy of the dot-com boom, a final spectacular fireworks show before the clock struck midnight on the 20th century. The bubble was stretched to its breaking point, and when it finally burst, it would clear the way for a new, more ruthless, and infinitely more data-driven internet to rise from the ashes. The world of the early 2000s felt like a global hangover. The confetti from the Millennium Party had been swept away, leaving behind a blinking, uncertain reality. The digital gold rush was over. Pets.com, Webvan, Cosmo, these names, once whispered as the future of commerce, were now punchlines, digital ghosts haunting a landscape of 404 errors and liquidated assets. The promise of a frictionless, utopian internet had dissolved, and what was left was a dial-up screech and a healthy dose of skepticism. For advertisers, the playground had changed. The wild, unrestrained optimism of the late 90s was gone. They had to find a new way to connect with an audience that was growing more cynical, more fragmented, and just tired. And in this strange new millennium, a sound began to echo. It started on television screens during commercial breaks, a low, guttural, almost primal call. It wasn't a jingle. It wasn't a slogan. It was a question, stretched and distorted into a multi-syllable greeting. It was four friends kicking back, watching the game, picking up a landline telephone, a device that was already starting to feel a little nostalgic, and checking in on each other in the most ridiculously simple way imaginable. No punchline, no clever wordplay, just a chorus of dudes, slurring a single glorious word. Wass up. The Budweiser Wass Up campaign, which first aired in late 1999 but truly exploded into a cultural phenomenon in 2000, was lightning in a bottle. It was the last great analog meme, in an era just before broadband became ubiquitous, before YouTube or social media. This ad went viral through the most old-fashioned conduits imaginable: word of mouth and the telephone itself. It was brilliantly, almost stupidly simple. It captured a universal, unspoken ritual of male friendship, the low-effort check-in, the call about nothing that was really a call about everything. It wasn't selling the taste of the beer. It wasn't selling its heritage or its ingredients. It was selling a moment, a feeling. It was selling the idea that you and your friends were part of an inside joke. And the price of admission was just knowing how to answer the phone. The ad's beauty was in its perceived authenticity. It was based on a short film called True, by director Charles Stone III, who starred in the ad with his actual friends. It didn't feel like it was cooked up in a boardroom. It felt like a camera had just happened to capture a real moment. People didn't just quote the ad, they performed it. All across America, office phones, home phones, and the first clunky cell phones rang, only to be answered by a drawn-out, croaking wassawup. It was connective tissue for a culture that didn't know it was on the verge of being atomized. It was a shared language, a brief, silly, unifying moment of communal absurdity. But the carefree slacker vibe that wass up so perfectly encapsulated was living on borrowed time. The 2000s were a decade cleaved in two, with a single day acting as the dividing line. Before September 11, 2001, and after. In the wake of the attacks, the national mood shifted seismically. The irony and playful cynicism of the 90s evaporated overnight, replaced by a raw, somber patriotism. The world felt dangerous and uncertain. And suddenly a commercial about a bunch of guys goofing off on the phone felt trivial. It belonged to a different, more innocent world. Advertising had to recalibrate, and fast. Brands scrambled to find the right tone. Many ads became overtly patriotic, featuring flags and soaring eagles. Budweiser itself aired one of the most powerful ads of the era. A nearly silent spot where their iconic Clydesdale horses traveled to New York City and bow in respect toward the altered skyline. The message was clear. The time for silliness was over. The time for reverence and unity was now. And as the culture was grappling with this new geopolitical reality, another revolution was quietly taking place, born from the ashes of the dot-com bubble. While the flashy e-commerce sites had failed, the companies building the internet's plumbing had survived and were getting stronger. Google was becoming a verb, and in Cupertino, California, a company that had nearly gone bankrupt just a few years earlier was about to change the world. In October 2001, just over a month after the 9/11 attacks, Steve Jobs took the stage and introduced a small white rectangle called the iPod. 1,000 songs in your pocket. It was a statement of purpose so simple, so profound, that it instantly rendered every other music device on the planet obsolete. The iPod wasn't just a product. It was a declaration of personal freedom. It was the soundtrack to your life, curated by you. And the advertising that sold it was just as revolutionary. There were no features listed, no tech specs, no smiling families. There was just a black silhouette, dancing against a brightly colored background. The only thing you could see clearly was the white device and the iconic white earbuds. The Apple Silhouette campaign was the anti-WhatsApp. Where the Budweiser ad was communal, loud, and verbal, the iPod ad was individualistic, silent, and kinetic. WhatsApp was about being part of the group. The iPod was about being the star of your own movie. The white earbuds became the decade's ultimate status symbol. A visible sign that you were living in your own curated world, separate from the noise around you. It was a subtle but profound shift in marketing. The goal was no longer to make you feel like you belonged to the tribe, but to convince you that you were the tribe. You were the tastemaker. You were the DJ. This pivot toward radical individualism was the defining spirit of the new internet that was emerging, Web 2.0. The first wave of the internet was about consumption. You read news, you bought things. The new wave was about creation and participation. LiveJournal and Blogger let you publish your thoughts. MySpace, which launched in 2003, let you build a digital shrine to yourself, meticulously choosing your profile song and your top 8 friends. Then, in 2005, YouTube arrived, and suddenly everyone with a cheap digital camera had their own broadcast network. The power was shifting. The gatekeepers, record labels, movie studios, television networks, were losing their grip. Culture was no longer being dictated from the top down. It was bubbling up from the bottom. The 2000s became a battleground between the old guard and the new. Napster had already fired the first shot in the music wars, and the iPod delivered the killing blow to the album as a concept. Reality TV, with shows like American Idol, turned viewers into voters, giving them a direct say in creating the next pop star. The decade that began with a shared analog catchphrase was ending with millions of people crafting their own unique digital identities. The central promise of technology was no longer about connecting you to the group, but about empowering you as an individual. And in 2007, Apple unveiled the device that would merge these two worlds, the personal soundtrack of the iPod and the participatory nature of the new internet. The iPhone put a supercomputer in your pocket, tethering your individual world to a global network 24/7. It was the ultimate tool of self-expression and simultaneously the ultimate portal for connection. The phone call about nothing was replaced by the status update about everything. The stage was now set for a new decade where personal brands, viral content, and the data that tracked it all would become the most powerful forces in our world. And so the new decade dawned not with a bang, but with a notification. The digital town square we had been building piece by piece was now the center of civilization. The internet was no longer a place you visited. It was the invisible architecture of your entire life, humming away in your pocket. The 2010s would be defined by this total immersion. It was the decade of the smartphone, the app, the stream, the selfie. We weren't just online, we were the content. Our lives, curated and broadcast, became the product. In this new landscape, advertising had to evolve or die. The old model of interrupting a TV show felt clumsy, almost rude. To get our attention, brands had to become part of the stream. They had to be as interesting, as funny, as shareable as the user-generated content surrounding them. The goal was no longer just to be seen, the goal was to go viral. Virality was the holy grail, an unpredictable, chaotic, and incredibly powerful force that could turn a small startup into a household name overnight, or revitalize a brand that had been gathering dust for decades. And in 2010, one brand did exactly that. It took a product that couldn't be less exciting, men's body wash, and launched a campaign so perfectly engineered for the new digital age that it didn't just sell soap. It fundamentally changed the rules of advertising. The brand was Old Spice. The commercial was, "The man your man could smell like." It opens with the direct address, a confident, charming man looking right through the screen, into your soul. Hello, ladies. Not hello, everyone. It's a laser-targeted mission statement. This ad isn't for the men who use the product. It's for the people who buy it for them. It's a conversation, not a broadcast. And then the magic begins. In what appears to be a single unbroken shot, he tells you to look at your man, then back to him. He's in a bathroom, which seamlessly falls away to reveal he's on a boat. He's holding a bottle of Old Spice that magically becomes a handful of diamonds, which then pour into an oyster. He's on a horse. The sheer technical wizardry of it was breathtaking. In an era of jump cuts and frantic editing, this was a fluid, almost theatrical performance. It begged you to ask, how did they do that? And in the age of YouTube, that question was gold. It drove millions of rewatches, with people pausing, rewinding, and scrutinizing every frame. The ad wasn't just a 30-second spot. It was a puzzle box, a piece of short-form cinema designed for obsessive digital consumption. But the technical brilliance was just the vehicle. The real genius was its tone. It was a perfect storm of confidence, absurdity, and humor. The script is a masterpiece of the bizarre. The tickets are now diamonds. I'm on a horse. These lines make no logical sense, but they are delivered with such unblinking conviction by actor Isaiah Mustafa that you don't question them. You just accept them. The ad created a fantasy, not of a product but of a feeling. The feeling of impossible, effortless cool. It was selling an archetype. A man who could do anything, be anywhere, and smell incredible while doing it. This commercial was the spark, but what Old Spice did next was the fire. They understood that the Super Bowl broadcast wasn't the end of the campaign. It was the beginning. They took the conversation to the internet. The creative team, along with Isaiah Mustafa, locked themselves in a room for 2.5 days and created over 180 short, personalized video responses to comments and questions from people on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. They responded to regular fans, to celebrities like Alyssa Milano and Ashton Kutcher, to other brands. This was revolutionary. It transformed a monologue into a dialogue. The brand wasn't just a faceless corporation anymore. It was a character, a personality you could interact with in near real time. It was the ultimate validation for the consumer. You tweet at a brand, and the impossibly cool Old Spice guy answers you directly by name. It created a level of brand loyalty and engagement that money simply couldn't buy. In its first week, the campaign generated over 40 million YouTube views, and Old Spice sales rocketed up over 100%. It was, for a time, the most watched online video campaign in history. The Man Your Man Could Smell Like became the blueprint for 2010's advertising. It demonstrated that the internet wasn't just a place to dump your TV ads. It was its own unique ecosystem with its own language. The language of memes, of interactivity, of authenticity, or at least the performance of authenticity. This set the stage for the other iconic campaigns of the decade. In 2011, Volkswagen's The Force ad, featuring a tiny Darth Vader, was released online before its Super Bowl debut, racking up millions of views and proving that pre-releasing your big ad was the new winning strategy. In 2012, the Dollar Shave Club launched with a single, low-budget, hilarious YouTube video that directly mocked the established giants and built a billion-dollar company on the back of its viral success. And in 2014, Always #LikeAGirl campaign showed that virality could be harnessed for social good, sparking a global conversation about gender stereotypes and pioneering the era of purpose-driven marketing. What all these ads had in common was a deep understanding of the new digital contract. They weren't just selling a product, they were offering a piece of content that you would want to share. They made you feel something: amusement, wonder, inspiration, belonging. They invited you to be part of the joke, part of the conversation, part of the movement. The ad itself became a social object, a token you could share with your friends to say, "This is funny," or "This is me." But this relentless pursuit of virality began to reshape our culture in profound ways. The 2010s became a decade of optimization. Everything was A/B tested. Headlines were crafted for maximum click-through rates. Thumbnails were designed with specific colors and facial expressions proven to attract the eye. We were all being subtly trained by algorithms to create and consume content in a certain way. Brands wanted to feel like your friend, but their friendship was conditional, constantly measured by engagement metrics. This created a strange paradox. As brands tried harder and harder to appear authentic and human, their methods became more and more data-driven and robotic. They used our personal information, our likes, our shares, our search history, to craft messages that felt personal but were, in fact, mass-produced for a demographic of one. The Old Spice campaign, in retrospect, was a brilliant but benevolent version of this. It felt personal because humans were actually responding, but it laid the groundwork for a future where that personalization would be automated, scaled, and deployed with terrifying efficiency. The decade was a blur of viral challenges, memes, and trending topics. We were all swimming in the same global digital ocean, and advertising was the current pulling us along. The lines between entertainment, communication, and commerce dissolved completely. Was that influencer's vacation post a real moment? Or a sponsored ad for a hotel? Was that funny video a random piece of user content? Or a carefully seeded piece of marketing for a new movie? It became harder and harder to tell. The world had been rewired. The power to capture global attention no longer belonged solely to major networks or studios. It now belonged to anyone with a clever idea, a smartphone, and an understanding of the algorithm. The 2010s were the great democratization of media, but also the great monetization of self. We had built a spectacular, interconnected world where anyone could go viral, but where everything and everyone was for sale. The fun and games of the viral decade had built a powerful, all-seeing machine. And as the 2010s came to a close, we were all about to find out who was really in control. And then the machine was switched on. The world shut down. The year was 2020, and the abstract fears of the last decade became our concrete reality. We weren't just living online anymore, we were trapped there. The office, the classroom, the bar, the movie theater, they all collapsed into a single glowing screen. And the all-seeing machine we had so casually built to share memes and watch unboxing videos suddenly became our only window to the world. In this new, terrifying reality, advertising had to change overnight. The slick, high-budget fantasies of the 2010s felt not just tone-deaf but insulting. Who cared about a luxury car when you couldn't leave your driveway? Who was buying designer clothes for a Zoom call? For the first time in a long time, brands were scared. They didn't know what to say. So at first, they all said the same thing. Out came the somber piano music, the shots of empty city streets, the shaky iPhone footage of doctors and nurses, the grave, reassuring voiceover telling us that in these uncertain times, we were all in this together. For a few weeks it felt sincere. Then it became a parody. Every corporation, from pizza chains to insurance companies, was suddenly a frontline hero, patting us on the head and promising that everything would be okay, just as soon as we bought their product. The public saw right through it. The trust that had been eroding for decades was now crumbling. We didn't want to be sold a cheap, corporate version of hope. We wanted anyone, to just be honest. We wanted them to admit that things were not okay, that this was absurd, that the world felt like a total dumpster fire. And then, in December of 2020, after a year that felt like a decade, one company finally did. They didn't offer a helping hand or a hopeful message. They offered us a joke. A dark, cynical, and absolutely perfect joke. The company was Match.com, and the ad was titled, "A Match Made in Hell." The commercial opens on Satan himself, a big, red, bored-looking demon, sitting on his throne in hell, scrolling through his dating profile. He gets a match. Her name? 2020. Their first date is in a deserted park. They hit it off immediately. We see them on a romantic montage, set to a re-recorded, sweeter version of Taylor Swift's Love Story. They work out together in an empty gym. They watch a movie in a completely empty theater. They hoard rolls of toilet paper from a public bathroom. They sit on a park bench and watch as the sky is filled with fire and meteors. He looks at her and says, "I just don't want this year to end." And she whispers back, "Who would?" The ad ends with the tagline, "Make 2021 your year." It was brilliant. It was cathartic. It was the first honest piece of advertising we had seen all year. It didn't try to comfort us, commiserated with us. It looked at the collective trauma and anxiety of the entire planet and said, "Yeah, this is hell. Let's laugh about it." In 60 seconds, it captured the entire mood of the year more accurately than 1,000 somber piano ads ever could. It did what all great advertising does. It held up a mirror and showed us ourselves. But this time, the reflection wasn't an idealized vision of who we wanted to be. It was a perfect, hilarious reflection of the mess we were actually in. The ad went insanely viral, not because it was a spectacle, but because it was true. It was the ultimate validation. And it signaled a new contract between brands and consumers for a new decade. In a world saturated with misinformation and corporate platitudes, the most valuable commodity is now brutal, unflinching honesty. And so our journey ends, a century after it began. We've seen it all. We've gone from simple, text-based ads in the 1920s promising a solution to a problem, to the birth of the American dream in the 1950s, a dream of white picket fences and a car in every garage, all brought to you by Chevrolet. We saw the 1960s ignite a creative revolution, where Volkswagen dared to tell us to think small, in a culture obsessed with being big. We watched the 1970s try to heal a wounded nation by teaching the world to sing in perfect harmony, courtesy of Coca-Cola. We powered through the 1980s, an era of blockbuster excess, where Apple Computer threw a sledgehammer at the status quo and declared war on conformity. We navigated the cynical, grunge-filled 1990s where Nike told us it wasn't about the shoes, it was about an attitude, just do it. We logged on in the 2000s, a decade of digital confusion, where a laid-back Mac and a stuffy PC personified our anxieties about the coming technological wave. We clicked, shared, and liked our way through the 2010s, where Old Spice proved that the ad itself could be the entertainment, creating a viral sensation that was more performance art than sales pitch. And finally we arrive here, in the 2020s, finding love and laughter in a match made in hell, a perfect symbol for an era that demands authenticity above all else. Each of these commercials is more than just a clever pitch. It's a time capsule. It's a fossil preserved in the amber of our culture. Together they tell a story, the story of us. They show how we've changed, what we've valued, what we've feared, and what we've dreamed of. Advertising began as a simple tool of commerce, a way to tell people what was for sale. But over 100 years, it morphed into something else entirely. It became the background music to our lives, the wallpaper of our society. It became the dominant storytelling force of the modern age. These ads didn't just sell us soap, cars, and computers. They sold us identity. They sold us aspiration. They sold us community, rebellion, and comfort. They constructed the very idea of the good life, and then sold it back to us one 30-second spot at a time. Now, as we stand on the precipice of a future driven by artificial intelligence, the all-seeing machine we built is learning to think for itself. The ads of tomorrow won't just be targeted to our demographic. They will be generated for us as individuals, in real time, based on our moods, our conversations, our deepest and most unspoken desires. The mirror that advertising holds up will no longer just reflect our culture. It will reflect our own individual consciousness. The line between entertainment and advertisement, already blurry, will vanish completely. The story being told will be our own, and we will be both the audience and the star. And so the ultimate question we're left with is the one that has been humming beneath the surface of every commercial we've ever seen. In a world where everything is for sale, what part of ourselves is next? The story of advertising has always been the story of what we're willing to buy. The next chapter will be about what we're willing to sell.